All right, it is 10:01. I'd like to start this work session today with a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence. If you join me in that, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So your commissioners are packing.
Yes. Thank you very much. So, by way of introduction, Darius, our IT director, is over here madly managing our audio to keep everything working correctly. On the dais today, I'll just make these introductions across the board, and then I'd like everybody else in the room to quickly introduce yourself and your role so that we all have an understanding of that. We have Bobby Brooks, our business manager at the BOC, our indispensable right arm. Our Commissioner-elect, Drew Farmer, Commissioner John Sweet, myself, Rod Taylor, Commissioner Jay Trost from Curry County, Commissioner Brad Alcorn, and Curry's Commissioner-elect, Patrick Hollinger. So, Sheriff, could you start, and we'll just move across the table and then across the rows in the back as well. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Sheriff, Gabe Fabrizio, Coos County Sheriff's Office.
John Ward, Curry County Sheriff's Office.
Megan Sims, Coos County Finance Director and Treasurer.
Thomas Langford, the Trial Court Administrator for Coos and Curry Counties.
Caroline Morgan, Coos County HR Manager. Mary Shamahorn, Bandon Mayor.
Ryan Doyle, Chief of Code and Police.
Chris Chopinard, Chief of Coos Bay.
Jason Patterson, Admin Captain, Coos County Sheriff's Office.
Darius Meade, Coos County Jail Commander.
Eric Zandy, Coos County Sheriff's Office. Jeremy Crone, Curry County Jail Commander.
Paul Frazier, Coos County DA, lame duck.
Robert Baker, Deputy, lame duck as well.
Very good. And Natasha?
Oh, Natasha Tippett, Curry County Board of Commissioners, assistant.
And Darius, I already introduced you by happenstance. All right. So thank you all for being here today. I appreciate your attending this on rather short notice. This was this idea of discussing combining jail assets in some way is something that actually was brought to me by a Coos County employee. And in fact, I don't even know who it was because it was part of a compiled list that didn't have identifiers. So great idea, whoever made that suggestion to me, and I hope someday to find out who it was. I kept this pretty low key until we were ready to announce the meeting, and the necessary steps took place for that to happen, and now on this short notice we're here. Curry and Coos County both suffer from severe economic distress, and we are facing drastic cuts. As you all know, we're talking about, we've actually already voted to close our second pod of the jail, which is obviously detrimental to the cause of serving justice in Coos County. And I know that there are similar issues, budgetarily speaking, in Curry County. And so this is just one idea. Can we finance the maintenance of that second pod through a combination of jail investment, if you will, between the counties? We share many things in common, and more in common than not. And so, welcome to you Curry commissioners, and appreciate you being here. And so, there are, I know, that have come up in the last 36 hours, there are a number of concerns and difficulties and potential roadblocks or challenges that would need to be worked through if this idea were to proceed. And so I'd like to kind of get right to it. And it seems to me that the appropriate first individuals to speak of what they see in terms of this possibility, the benefits and the detriments as well, would be the two sheriffs. So Sheriff Fabrizio, Sheriff Ward, if you would care to please take a couple of minutes and just spell out what your perceptions are at this point and challenges that you see, I think that would be an effective opening to the meeting. And I see that Commissioner Sweet wants to pipe in with something first.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm not quite sure what the outline of the proposal is.
Okay.
I know there's talk about Curry County paying Coos County some money, a lot of operational details to be worked out.
Yeah.
But could we put that on the table here first?
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
And I know it's just a starting point.
No,
No one's
that's
bound to anything by anything that's
Yeah.
said here today.
point well taken, Commissioner. So the concept would be, as I understand it and as I have conceived it here, is that Curry County could reduce their overall expenses by reducing their jail capacity down to a couple of holding cells for temporary hold of prisoners. We could arrange a bilateral cooperative jail transport situation that runs a jail transport north once a day, south once a day. Utilize our second pod, which is in fact already budgeted for through June 30th. We could leave that open under that pretext and then utilize these coming months if we're able to arrive at a common intent and a purpose to go forward with an intergovernmental agreement to this effect. Then Curry County could utilize a certain capacity of that second pod for their prisoners. I use the word prisoners. I do not use the words, what is it called? Justice-involved individual or something like that.
Or adults.
Yeah, you won't get any woke pap from me. So anyway, whatever, they're detained individuals, and they could use our facility for that capacity. And if that arrangement would allow both counties to realize greater fiscal benefit, then that might be something that we want. Does that explain it suitably, Commissioner?
Thank you.
All right. Any questions on that? No? Okay. Sheriff?
All
The
right.
Sheriff, thank you.
Thank you. Is that, okay, sorry, I'm trying to determine the right distance. These are new. Thank you, Sheriff. Good morning, Sheriff Fabrizio, Coos County. Good to see you, Commissioners. I don't think I've met all of you yet, but nice. Thanks for coming up. And thanks to the Commissioners for continuing to explore new ideas. I think eventually we'll find something that'll help with sustainability. I mean, obviously, I would love nothing more than to keep our jail pod open. I'd cut off a finger if we had sustainable funding for it. But I do have some pretty grave concerns about this one. Of course, finances. I don't understand Curry County's finances. I've never seen them. It's not my place, is one. And then, Commissioner Taylor, you hit the other one on the head, which is transport. That one, I think, is going to be a much larger problem than a bilateral transport system, because crime happens 24 hours a day. If they had a holding cell, Curry County could hold them up to 4 hours, and I don't want to steal your thunder on that one, but that would necessitate a much more robust transport system than just a couple times a day, a lot more, unfortunately. And in doing due diligence over the last few days, I've talked to, of course, Sheriff Ward. Everybody at this table is who I was going to recommend, in addition to the district attorney. I think he has some unique insights that are incredibly important, as well as Thomas, actually. Thomas has done a lot of research as well. And if you guys know Thomas, if anybody in the audience doesn't know Thomas, he's trial court administrator. He runs the courts. And really what we're talking about is seeing these people to justice. And so it's integral. Yeah, this would be a great thing for Curry County. For Coos County. This would be the best thing that could happen to Coos County, in my opinion. However, it's incumbent on us to also consider the citizens of Curry County. I would be lying if I think it would be if I said it would be good for the citizens. No offense, that's your business. I understand that. But if you're talking a 4-hour turnaround to bring somebody to jail, that takes a police officer out of the equation a lot, or 5 if Brookings were to bring them directly, approximately. That's a huge concern just from a public safety standpoint. I don't know what Brookings police force looks like, but a lot of the agencies around here, we have one person on. Bringing them out for half their shift to bring one person to jail is untenable, another concern. So definitely some concerns. I mean, as far as holding the people, keeping the pod open, that's not a concern. That part's easy. But the logistics behind this, I think, necessitates some pretty serious exploration, and maybe insurmountable.
Okay. Sheriff Ward, would you mind if I interject with a question to clarify something the sheriff said? I want to kind of drill down for a moment on the transport question.
Yes.
Because my understanding had been that it might be a workable scenario that there be 2 holding cells, that you can actually have more than one individual in a holding cell. Is that not correct?
You can only hold an individual in a holding cell for 4 hours.
Yes.
Unless,
okay.
you have to have a fully operating jail with medical and meals
Right.
to hold them for longer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the obstacle with just a holding cell.
I don't know if that was.
Yeah, that's a bugaboo.
That's not me. And that's. I'll speak loud. I don't know when you record.
Yeah, we need it on the recording.
How's that? Better?
He's,
So.
yeah.
You good, Darius? Okay.
Yeah, we should be good.
So the concept of twice daily would probably work for court or scheduled court appearances. However, it'd probably be a lot more than that. There's going to be more than one person per court appearance. The issue becomes arrests. Anything, of course, people get arrested at 3 a.m., so that wouldn't work. The 4-hour rule would be initiated right away. So that would be necessitate probably, best estimate, we were thinking 4 or 5 additional personnel on top of what's needed to, and I'm starting to get into Sheriff Ward's category here, but in addition to what's needed to keep the holding cells open just for transports. So that's going to drive up costs quite a bit.
All right.
And that's 4 or 5 is a pretty low estimate, unfortunately.
Well,
Okay.
And then I'll add, one of the things that our district attorney had brought up was that when we have somebody who's facing a trial, they're going to need access to their attorney, which means they would need to essentially be local for those trials. If it's a 2-week trial, we would need something that would be more than a holding cell. We couldn't legally hold them in the holding cell for longer than 4 hours. So there's a bit of an obstacle there. They see some issues, but defense attorneys claiming not having access to their clients during trial. Now, can I ask, so both of you have been around for a long time and understand that this isn't necessarily a new concept. There was a time when Coos used to have beds in Curry, I think it was a 20 contract for 20, was it 10?
Not that I'm aware of. We've never seen it other than parole and probation we rented 4 beds out for parole and probation for a year.
For Coos?
For Coos County.
Okay.
But that was,
And then
I don't know of any other ones.
There was also a time when Curry transferred inmates up to Coos, and that was a long time ago, from what I understand.
Before my time then.
Mine too.
Mine
Sorry.
too.
Well, I've been here 34 years and I don't recall that.
Oh, okay.
So I don't recall there ever being a contract with Curry County to hold prisoners here, or with us having a contract with you to hold prisoners there.
Okay. Then I may have gotten some misinformation.
Please, Mr. District Attorney, seems like your input might precede Megan's. All right. Okay, well, that question somewhat laid to rest. Sheriff Ward, would you care to make some initial comments on the concept?
This is Sheriff Ward, Curry County Sheriff's Office. This concept is not new. We've looked at it before, and it just did not pencil out. I remember when Sheriff Zanny was here, came down and was invited down to the Board of Commissioners to talk about this same issue, and turned around and left without meeting the board after figuring out what the problems would be and what the cost would be. When I took over as sheriff, I appointed my division leaders to, like, I have a jail commander, I have a dispatch supervisor, I have patrol supervisors. So the one who has the most knowledge of this cost that would incur would be my jail commander, who is the keeper of the jail, and that's Lieutenant Jeremy Crone. We've worked and discussed this many times. We've discussed it with other people. It just does not pencil out. Our jail is a very antiquated jail. If we close that down, it'll never reopen because we're grandfathered in for the standards. And unfortunately, if we start going in and trying to gut it out and remodel and everything, we'd have to bring it up to state standards, and it'd be millions of dollars, and there's no way to do that at this point. There would still have to be staff involved down there. When you say transport up and down once a day, that isn't going to happen, because every 4 hours we would have to have somebody turning and burning with prisoners, as you call them. They're adults in custody, and I have no problem with how you determine that. But anyway, our adults in custody cannot be held for more than 4 hours, and it doesn't matter what time they get arrested. The transport time would also be involved in that as well. So if we hold somebody if it's a 2-hour round trip, we have to hold them for no more than 2 hours. We'd be turning and burning all day long, and the transport cost would be astronomical.
Sheriff, would the transport time be included in that 4 hours? And that 4-hour clock starts ticking when they arrive at the jail or at the time they're arrested?
Well, that's how I perceive it, and what I've been instructed is that the transport time is part of the holding time.
Okay. Does
I'd have to
Does that
confer
seem consistent with what
Lieutenant.
your understanding would be, Mr. Frazier?
Well, one of the things, first off, whatever you guys decide, it's your decision. And personally, would I like to keep our pot open? Yes, I'm like Gabe. I'd love to keep the pot open. But Gabe asked me to come up with, or asked me what type of issues that would be associated with this. And one of the issues is transport. One of the things you guys are going to need to do before you decide whatever you're going to do is you really need to bring state courts into this discussion, because AICs will have hearings where they have to be in court in person. Now, there's some things we probably could do by video, like an initial arraignment or something like that. But a release hearing, change of plea, sentencing, setting a trial, pretrial hearings, any individual case, you might have 4, 5, 6 appearances in court for that particular individual spread out over a couple of months. And so I told Gabe that if you do this, in my opinion, and again, I was looking at this from the standpoint of Coos County, if you did this, the transports would need to be basically Curry County's responsibility. The Coos County should not take on that responsibility, because there's a couple of things. Number one, when you're driving back and forth, you've got liability. What happens if one of your cars gets into a car crash? Okay, if it's a Coos County car, now it's Coos County's problem. And if we're transporting Curry County people, that creates an issue. Secondly, there's also a security issue, all right? There's going to be times now, especially when you have a major trial, where you have a trial that goes 4 or 5 days, if not longer. You're going to have predictable times in the morning where that defendant is going to be transported in the morning to be brought to Curry County, and predictable times when he's going to be brought back to Coos County. And there's a predictable route. Now, if somebody wanted to cause a problem, there's a security issue there. And I told the sheriff that, in my opinion, that is something you don't want to have the responsibility for. But again, if you work it out, you can work it out. The other things, some other things, if you want me to go ahead, I've got some other things he asked me to look at.
Well, could we first see if there was anything else that Sheriff Ward had that he needed to mention? As long as the table was there, I did want to briefly aside to you, but we'll get more from you.
All right.
You know, between the sheriffs, we've always had good cooperation with our partnerships, great partnerships, and we'll do anything we can to help each other. But as far as, you know, we have been cut to the bone down there as it is right now, and when you put out an email that says we could probably trim your budget, I'm thinking, trim it from what? 0 to 0? And paying money from Curry County to supplement the economy in Coos County just to keep the pot open. I sympathize with that, and I hope they find a way to do that. But I have to worry about my county and my constituents and the citizens. They're looking at me to protect their constitutional rights. And I don't know if anybody's talked to the consortium about this, because the adults in custody have rights to their attorneys, and attorneys would have to travel from Gold Beach to Coquille all the time to meet with their clients. And if there's a court appearance that needs to be done, we'd have to come get them, bring them back, take them back after the court appearance, and we haven't even talked about court security yet at this point. We still have to have staff, because I'm responsible for court security as well. And I have to have staff to be able to do that. So unfortunately, we're in a situation where, we've hit a fiscal cliff. I'm pretty sure that Coos County has to with the jail being shut down, one pod. But I don't think it needs to be on the backs of the Curry County citizens, taxpayers, to pay to keep the jail open up here.
Yeah, and Sheriff, I appreciate that, and that is absolutely 0% of any consideration from my perspective. That was not the intent behind this at all. So clearly, if what we're discussing can't be worked out as a mutually beneficial arrangement, then we have significantly reduced grounds on which to proceed. So I see that your jail commander is raising his hand back there and would like to interject something. Lieutenant, please do come up and interject what you would like.
Lieutenant Jeremy Crone, the Curry County Jail Commander. I want to preface by saying that I also, as of January 1st of 2025, I am one of the co-chairs for the Oregon Jail Commanders, and for the last 3 years I've been on the Oregon Transport Association as a president and vice president. So
you know those topics.
I know those topics. To answer your question, Commissioner Taylor, the ORS pertaining to the 4 hours specifically says 4 hours in custody. So how you interpret in custody is as soon as they're dropped off to the sheriff, they are in custody. So that starts from the day they enter our facility, or the time they enter our facility, to the time we release them to Coos County. So that will include those transport hours. On top of that, the AICs have a statutory requirement to, when they are released, they are to be released to their county of origin. So if you have someone that Brookings brought to us at 3 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock they ended up here, and they get released by Senate Bill 48, somebody has to take them back to Curry County. to be released. So there's another aspect to that that has not been discussed yet. So, but to answer your question, those 4 hours include those transport times.
Right. Okay, very good. Anything else, Lieutenant, at this time?
Not at this time. I'm sure we'll get to more topics around the
Okay,
jails.
all right.
Thank you.
Anything else right now, Sheriff?
No, I'd like to hear from Thomas, though. He had a lot of good ideas and.
Got a little smile on his face, like he's ready to go with some
Yeah,
stuff.
well, we're all in this together, so it's very important that we hear from the courts on this as well, and the consortium. I don't see anybody from the consortium here, so. Oh, and the other thing, if we bring people up here, they have a right to visitation as well, and people from Curry County would have to drive all the way up here just to visit their friends, family, or whoever is in custody. So that's another issue that I have to consider, putting our citizens through.
All right, very good. Mr. Langford.
Before I go, Chair Taylor, I'd like Mr. Frazier to finish his thoughts.
Oh, good, very good.
If that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Mr. Frazier?
Okay. Again, as I indicated, we should hear from Thomas and we should get input from the courts on this. But there's another thing that was briefly touched on, and that is the ability of persons in custody to have access to their lawyers. Okay. Now, right now here in Coos County, for example, our local public defender's office is at capacity. And so a lot of our cases, we have to go to the Oregon Public Defense Commission to get lawyers appointed for them. And these are lawyers from out of county. And one of the biggest problems we have had to get people from out of county to come to Coos County is the distance. They don't want to come to Coos County because they have to travel far. And they don't just have to be here for a court appearance. They have to come down and see their clients in jail. All right. And so we already have a problem with lawyers who do not want to accept court appointments in Coos County because of the distances involved. Now, I suspect you're going to have the same issue with your AICs right now. If you move them to Coos County, then the consortium down there who is representing them, they're going to have to come up here to visit with their clients versus an in-town visit. Okay, so now you've added an hour and a half drive, 3 hours to their, at some point they're going to get to the point to say, we can't do this anymore. So you've got an issue there with people having access to their attorneys. So I just thought I'd bring that up. Another thing that Sheriff kind of wanted me to look at a little bit was currently with the people that we have in our jail, they're there under Senate Bill 48. There's a lot of people that we would have had to turn loose that we would have kept in the past, but because of Senate Bill 48, we've had to release. So the concern I raised with the sheriff was this: okay, if you do this, how many people, how many beds are we talking about? I mean, are we
if we were to do it today, I think we're talking about 13 or 14, is that right?
I think they had 20 adults in custody.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you were to do that, okay. All right. So you're going to have Curry County prisoners mixed in with Coos County prisoners. And at some point in time, they're going to have to make decisions about who as they get closer to capacity, and they get to that 98 bed or the 100 bed limit, they're going to have to make decisions about who goes and who stays. And I told the sheriff that, in my opinion, if everybody should be equal, you shouldn't have to say, well, we've got 20 beds, Curry County people go, and if we have to turn somebody loose, a Coos County person's got to go. I said, everybody's got to be equal. So there shouldn't be this idea that if we get close to capacity and we have to start releasing people, that we should be following Senate Bill 48 for everybody, not just Coos County versus Curry County.
Okay.
Okay, so there's that issue. The other things that I'm going to put my Colton hat on now, since Colton's not here today, the county council. It's an unfortunate fact that prisoners, AICs, they get sick. All right, they get ill. All right. We do have a nurse and we do have medical services available in the jail. And I believe the sheriff checked and said even if we brought in Curry County people, that would not affect their contract with them and would not increase the cost. Is that right?
That's correct.
Right. However, sometimes AICs need to go to the doctor. And sometimes they need to go to the ER room. Sometimes they need to have a medical procedure. Every time a Coos County AIC goes to the doctor, goes to the emergency room, whatever, Coos County has to pay that bill. And I told the sheriff that, in my opinion, if you were to do this, you would need to make sure that Curry County would be responsible for those medical costs that would not be covered by their contract. So I don't know if that's something you need to think about if you're going to do this. The other thing is unfortunately, and I'm not familiar with the history of your jail that much, Sheriff, but unfortunately prisoners, AICs, die in custody. And when that occurs, there's an investigation, obviously. Sometimes it's natural causes, sometimes it's a suicide, could be worse. But in the last 10 years or so, and I think Sheriff Fabrizio will agree with me, every time somebody died in our jail, there's been a lawsuit. And so if it would happen that a Curry County prisoner died in custody, there needs to be something in the agreement about who, if there should be shared liability there and so forth. So I brought that up. Okay. The last thing that, and Sheriff Ward touched on this, if you close your jail and convert it to a holding facility, you will never be able to open it again. It's grandfathered in on so many different things. It's, as the Sheriff said, it's old, and it's clearly not up to current standards. Okay, because the grandfathering, you don't have to worry about those. But if you close that jail, you lose all those grandfather protections. And so if you, in 2 years, decide, well, we can't afford this anymore, or we don't want to pay Coos County for this anymore, you will never be able to open that jail again. And what are we going to do with these people then? What's going to happen with them? So, you know, like I say, if we can work this out, great, fine, wonderful. I'd love to see it. But these are issues that I think you all need to take into account and address as you're making this decision. And, you know, if you make it part of an agreement, there's some things that need to be spelled out.
Yes, clearly that would be, I appreciate the articulation. Is that all for now?
Okay,
All for now?
that's it for now, unless you have questions for me.
Any questions? Mr. Langford, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner Taylor, fellow commissioners, Commissioner-elects. Welcome to the table. I don't know if we want to give Mr. Spancel an opportunity to talk as a DA. He is online, I see, and I know we've given both sheriffs an opportunity and also the DA in Coos County an opportunity. And I don't know if we would like to right now offer the elected district attorney in Curry
Certainly would.
County.
Thank you for pointing out his presence. I wasn't aware he was there. Mr. Spancel,
Can you guys hear me?
would you? Yes, we can.
Hi, Josh Spancel, Curry County DA. Paul hit on a lot of the points that I have. I talked to Commissioner Trost yesterday about this, and we talked at length about all the different logistics and the scenarios that we all need to think about, and I think we could talk about those all day if we wanted to. But the main thing is that this is an incredibly big lift from the sheriff's office standpoint, the district attorney's office standpoint, and the courts. And yeah, obviously Thomas can talk more about the court situation, but there's a lot of issues here, and that's what we're here for. So I don't have anything else to add at this point, but I guess I appreciate everybody coming to the table. But from my standpoint, this is a huge lift, and I haven't heard a lot anything that benefits Curry County yet. So I'm interested to hear anything of that nature. That's all I have.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. All right.
So I can't kick the can anymore.
No, it's definitely in front of you.
First and foremost, as a community member, I think I should start from that standpoint. I think it's incredibly important that we have facilities in our counties that can house individuals that need to be housed. I also think it's incredibly important that we have resources that we can provide individuals in the criminal justice system, be it as a youth or as an adult, where they can get services in our communities. So both our communities lack both those areas. And I don't envy the position that the BOC, the Board of Commissioners, is currently in or has been in the past. It's a very tough and difficult position to be as a leader in a community, to have to make decisions that impact people's lives, people's jobs, and people's safety. So it's a very difficult position to be in, and I'm sorry that each of you are in that, but I understand the difficulties that are facing our counties and are facing you and our partners. To everyone in this room and everyone joining online, it takes a partnership and it takes relationship development to make change. So thank you for participating and being involved in this process. I think it's a process that needs to continue and go on beyond today's conversation. In reference to the idea and the concept around the consolidation or the transferring of a piece of the Curry County Jail to Coos County as proposed, many of the topics I could echo and reiterate in length and in detail. From the court's perspective, in my professional capacity, DA Frazier is correct. There are a multitude of hearings where in-person appearance is required from a defendant. And the defendant at any time can request an in-person appearance, and the court has to grant that in-person appearance. So aside from a couple carve-outs that the court can clearly work with the DA's office in Curry and with partners, release hearings, sentencings, trials would all be in custody matters that individuals that are in custody would have to be brought to the Curry County Courthouse, be it in Gold Beach or another location in the future, for those hearings, on top of the 4-hour round trips, including the custodial hold period of that trip that would have to be somehow accommodated by a transport team. The sheriff mentioned, as well as the sheriff mentioned, the sheriff is responsible at this point in both our communities, in both our counties, in every county in the state of Oregon, for the security at the courthouse. We can all articulate that we wish that security was better, or they had the resources to provide it. The removal of the response in either facility, be it in Coos County or Curry County, from jail capacity impacts the safety and the security of everyone entering the courthouse. That's not just the court staff or just the litigants entering. That's the shared resource of the court facility and the individuals that engage in that facility in our community. Both of our courthouses house an elections office. The courthouse in Coos County houses treasurer, houses the assessor's office as well. Both courthouses house the DA's offices. Individuals, unfortunately, come to our courthouses, be it for all those purposes, a lot of times on their worst day. And unfortunately, sometimes have bad intentions. We've never gotten to experience the ultimate negative intention, but it could happen. I would mention and reiterate some things that Paul said related to the transports. There are truly only 3 routes, maybe 4 routes to and from the 2 locations. And unfortunately, in my 8 years here, 101 has slid, I think 3 or 4 times and been closed for multiple week periods. And it is something that I think needs to be highlighted, is that in the event that 101 closes, if this plan were to go through from the BOC and we were to start work on this event eventually, that is a consideration of how we get individuals to and from, both on the transport side for the custody realm and on the court appearance side to and from, because they would add time. Obviously, going through Broadbent over the hill and through logging roads is not the best in the wintertime, and so the alternative is a very long round trip to 101 and around, which would add hours.
I-5, you mean?
Yes, yeah, I-5. It would add hours to the trip. So I want to mention that. I could speak at length around the attorney issue. We have a very small consortium in Curry County. There are 3 attorneys in that office right now. If any of those attorneys were to leave at this point, that office would ultimately collapse to a point that the defendants are in a position that they are in Coos County, where there are no attorneys at this point, and we're having to use OPDC because the attorneys that are available are at their max capacity by contract. Once they hit that threshold, the sheriff is required by federal order, if there's no representation, to release those individuals after 7 days in custody. There's no wiggle room around that. If the consortium closes in Curry and we don't have representation, the sheriff has to release those individuals after 7 days. Period, end. There is no opportunity there.
Regardless of charge, right?
Regardless of charge. That could be murder, that could be a DUI, and everything in between. The individual has to be released after 7 days. So it is a very fine needle that is standing up attorney capacity in Curry County right now. We are working, just so the Board of Commissioners is aware, I have been working with all the law schools in the state of Oregon to set up a rural internship program to bring attorneys to our communities and to fund that, to bring attorneys into our communities. And we hope to have interns from the law schools this coming summer to expose attorneys to our community. Because while we're talking about a lot of negativity, both Coos County and Curry County are beautiful places to live. There's a lot to offer in our communities. Before I get to questions, I would like to close with the fact that this is, for me, both professionally and personally, this is one item I think that's worth talking about. And I appreciate the fact that we're talking about it, and we're talking about how we can save money for our communities. But there's other items that we can also discuss about sharing resources, and I think we should discuss all those items and discuss how we could share resources more effectively and more efficiently, and not just stop at this item if this item is unsuccessful. As the DA in Curry County mentioned, not hearing a lot of positivity. I wish I could give you more. I would like the jail to be at more capacity, at a higher capacity. I would like the jail to be at a higher capacity than the 98 beds it was at. I would like the jail in Curry to be at a larger capacity, and I would also like there to be more community resources available when individuals are released. Those are all things that I would like, but the unfortunate brass tacks of the matter is there's X dollars available, and those are very, very far and few between for you guys to have to handle. And it's a tough position. So questions that you may have for me, and I'm sure Megan would like to come back up and talk.
She's always eager to get a microphone. Okay. Anybody have questions for Mr. Langford?
No, I just a comment. So, you know, I'm glad that we're having this discussion, as you said, as you stated. You know, the reality is our rural, particularly O&C counties, face considerable financial strains, and I think that in order for us to continue to have capacity to provide services to our citizens, we're going to have to look at unique ways of co-opting some of our resources. And maybe this isn't it, but maybe this is a lead into future discussions about other areas of county service, right? And so, I think that I'm glad that you brought that up because I feel like it is a healthy and needed discussion. One of the things I think we can all agree on is that our voters have said time and time again that they don't want increased taxes, and they want us to explore alternative ideas. And this is just one route to be able to show that we are exploring these ideas. And some of them may bear fruit, and some may not. One of the things that, and I will just start, Commissioner Taylor, with, you'd mentioned it would have to be mutually beneficial. And so how I see it being mutually beneficial, removing the obstacles, right? I'm just in fantasy land of the obstacle issues. Mutually beneficial to me would mean that Coos retains their pod open, but the Curry would have equal, if not more, bed capacity and have some cost savings. And so that might not be a realization. But that's when we say mutual benefit, I think we would have to have, that level of benefit as well. But having all the right people at the table with all of the knowledge that everyone brings is why, is important. Because obviously, if it was just left up to some people who don't have all of the ins and outs, logistics, and et cetera, then that's when bad decisions can be made. Right. So
I want to acknowledge that we are missing a couple individuals. We're missing all the police chiefs from Curry County. We have some police chiefs in the audience. Thank you both for attending. We are missing the police chiefs down in Curry County, as well as maybe some of the city officials down in Curry County as well. I'm not sure if there's been conversations with those individuals, but we do have quite a few people in here, but there's a couple individuals I think that are missing. I'm always willing to take a phone call from any one of those individuals at any time of the day to talk through things as well.
Yeah,
So,
and I think I can speak on behalf of some of the officials in Curry. They were caught off guard because this wasn't a discussion that had a long ramp, right? It was a quick, and I think it was expedited because of a deadline at the end of the month that was decided upon. And how I explained last night was this is an exploratory discussion. There are no concretes. There hasn't even been discussion of what it would look like in terms of service delivery as far as like how many beds would be here and how many beds would be there and who would have this and who would have that. I think having this discussion supersedes those, because if we don't have a full scope of the obstacles, then we're going in extremely short-sighted. So, I appreciate this, and I would 100% agree that this needs to be the beginning of probably many discussions. And we brought that up in the district AOC meeting, where our rural counties may need to reinvent how county operations have been managed for the last few decades, given our common financial constraints. So this was a step in one direction that was kind of highlighted and probably moved forward in a fairly quick fashion because of a decision that was made recently, and an opportunity to maybe find a solution. So
I appreciate you bringing that point up, Commissioner Trost. I was, when the idea came to the fore, we were facing the reality of our pod closing on January or on December 31st. And my hope was that ideally, maybe we could work out whatever obstacles would be there, come out of this meeting with a letter of intent that would give us the justification to forestall that closure and retain the personnel that are practically on their way out the door already. And so that was the hope. And, you know, it appears to me at this juncture that that's not something that's going to be realized today, but I appreciate Mr. Langford's comment, and this was an intention here today as well, that maybe since we have all these minds in the room, maybe some other ideas, some other concepts for that collaborative effort come out of this pool that we have, and maybe we can come up with some other ideas that we can explore going forward. So, very good, thank you. I'm sorry, was that all?
That's
it. Okay. Very good. We did have, I mean, it's not that we have a shortage of obstacles that have already been brought up. In fact, I think there was a budgetary issue that was raised by our finance director treasurer, but I think that probably is secondary at this stage in this meeting today.
You don't want to talk about how broke we are? I saw your email. We have concerns about that too.
Yeah.
You should be concerned about us as well.
Yes, we are.
Well, we face almost all the same challenges, and I do think that we have. There are things that we could do to collaborate and combine efforts and consolidate those expenses to our mutual benefit. But
You mind if I say something?
please, Sheriff.
You know, we had a discussion about a lot of different things, but the one thing that I haven't heard too much about is our employees. They have families, they're rooted, and when they hear these things like we did, you know, when only a couple days notice for this meeting or this concept, that's why we're losing people, because they're looking for other jobs because we can't retain them with the knowledge that we don't have stuff for them. You know what I'm talking about? And it concerns me that, that they go through all this anxiety as we are, but we need to keep them informed just as soon as possible of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, very good. And I in no way want the proposal of this concept to indicate any kind of insensitivity toward any county employee. This is purely about trying to realize or trying to arrive at a workable situation for both counties. So I am very sensitive to the plight of our employees as well as yours. So please rest assured of that. Well, Commissioner Sweet, do you have any thoughts at this point?
Well, again, I appreciate the effort that has gone into this, and I also appreciate John for his arms. Oh, I'm sorry. I appreciate the effort that has gone into this. I appreciate the concerns of Sheriff Ward, the impact this can have on employees if rumors get out, and they always do. So if we do go ahead, we should be cognizant of that. I would encourage us to go ahead with seeking other opportunities. It seems to me that the operational impediments to going ahead with this are overwhelming. I just don't see how it will work. That said, if recognizing what the obstacles are, if someone has some ideas, I think we could come back and listen to another proposal. But as far as right now, I think we should agree amongst ourselves, yeah, let's continue to look for ways to make this or things like this happen, but let's kind of do the homework quietly so we don't create the rumors that John alluded to, or Sheriff Ward alluded to. They're real, and I hear it from our employees all the time, how devastating rumors like this are. On the other hand, I know that if we extend this a little bit, there's going to be some pizza coming. I hate to turn away a free lunch. Could you speed that up a little bit?
Well, only, that was a contingency plan if we do move into that kind of a time frame.
And the other thing I'd like to hear from Patrick and Brad as well.
Yeah. So as I'm sitting here, I'm listening to our sheriffs and our jail commander and our district attorneys explain some of these obstacles that this potentially would face. I'm sitting here and I'm trying to kind of work the problem and work through some of those obstacles, and I'm thinking, transportation, maybe shared cost with the cities, and maybe meeting halfway, and maybe all this stuff. But the bottom line is, when we actually get to the meat of our judicial system, the courtroom, it's pretty hard to get past any of those obstacles. There are mandates in this state that are not going to change when it comes to people who are in custody and their rights, and they should have those rights, absolutely. And we need to, that's part of the American justice system, and we need to make sure that those rights are honored and maintained. And that's an obstacle that because of the place we live, the geographical boundaries and obstacles that we face, it would make that extremely problematic. But I will say, as you know, we had a levy that we proposed. It failed by quite a margin, and when it did, we learned a lot. And one of the things that we learned was the people in the community, well, they want us to explore every possible option and funding solution that we can before they pay any more money. And consolidation was one of the things that has come up, and some of the feedback that I got was, that's something we really need to consider and have conversations about. And I think we have an obligation to do that. And I think this is a really good starting point, Commissioner Taylor. I think this is a needed conversation. And we're going to propose a second levy. Citizens in our community are pushing it forward. It'll be half the cost. But again, those questions are going to come up about, did you explore these things? Mm-hmm. Did you eliminate them? Did you take them off the table? And I think the conversation we're having with our district attorneys and our other experts in the room, I think it answers those questions of whether or not this is actually viable. And I think it definitely clarifies some of the issues around our next levy proposal. So the last thing I want to say is these are conversations that we need to have more frequently. We need to have them with our neighboring counties, but we also need to have them with our law enforcement professionals within our own counties. And we need to have those conversations to see how we can share those resources. And we need to make public safety a priority in doing that. And that's all I have, Rod.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Nicely said.
Yes, very much. So, Mr. Hollinger?
Sure. Just a couple of quick comments. Thanks for facilitating all of this and bringing all of the law enforcement experts in here to the room. it's definitely an area of expertise I do not have. I don't have any sort of law enforcement background whatsoever, so I'm getting an education as I go through all of this now. But I took a whole bunch of notes. I listened to every one of you. I understand there's pretty substantial challenges that would need to overcome in order to make something like this happen. But I just wanted to touch back on, kind of what we've been saying here, being able to find other solutions and other funding solutions. And I know earlier in the year, Commissioner Taylor came down and we held a little bit of a workshop in Curry County on brainstorming other ideas for funding and being able to look for other avenues to be creative with in order to find funding. And that's something I'm very much involved in right now, and looking at other avenues that maybe we've never known about or didn't even know exist, or that we even had access to. So as I continue to come along some of these ideas or funding solutions, I'll be sure to share them with you guys as well, because it can mutually benefit all of us. And I just appreciate the opportunity to come up here and listen and absorb some more education. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Chair Taylor, we should let Drew have.
Well, Mr. Farmer was my next call there, Commissioner. Thank you for that point up.
Appreciate you letting me sit up here and start up early.
Good practice for you.
Yeah, it was good practice. Not been at a dais in a
Don't want to
3
throw
months.
anything at you yet, though. You don't know the full story.
Yeah, I feel unaccomplished
They've been
in that
kind.
regard. This being on short notice, I'll just state up front that I'm going by my memory and understanding of some of these items, and if something's off kilter, please let me know. Off the top, I appreciate Curry County coming up here. I've operated 2 nonprofits that had branch offices in Curry County before, and I know any interplay between the 2 counties could get contentious in the past, so I appreciate y'all coming up and being willing to talk about collaboration. Some of the items on my mind, obviously, the shuttle and transport of prisoners, you're right, it is a potential liability, and I don't know a good way around those limited routes. I would ask, with regards to when the road goes out, what is currently done in Curry County when the new schedule goes out and Brookings gets isolated? How is that adapted to? And how would that differ to the situation if there were to be between Curry and Coos counties? Let's see. As far as, I think it's good to continue these conversations. I think a project like this would be a 1 to 2 year project. Obviously, 1 year of talking about what some of these workarounds could be, and probably easily another year for implementation. Something we may want to discuss, not to move forward with this immediately, but to talk about doing this, is that our legislators are allowed to continue to put in bills through the 17th of next month. And this is possibly an opportunity to talk about collaboration across rural communities and an opportunity to pursue pilot funding for something like this. Funding for the technical assistance to work out the hitches, and funding to bridge gaps while that process is worked on. So I would suggest that might be something we talk about as the counties to mutually pursue and get funded. I'm sure Court Boyce would be happy to work on it. I talked to Boomer Wright a little bit. He's happy to work on it. So we have an opportunity in that regard. As far as savings go, obviously there's a lot of expense involved. If we're talking about transports required in a 4-hour gap, let's say it's a 3-hour turn burn, you need 8, that's 8 movements a day. So that is a substantial concern. But on the savings side, I don't know if Curry County has medical insurance for its prisoners while they're in custody. My understanding is that that might not be the case.
So you're aware, when somebody comes into custody, doesn't matter if they have Medicare, Medicaid, it stops.
Yeah.
We're totally responsible for all their health costs.
Okay.
So and so that's why they have the contract with the nurse and everything, to provide basic medical care in the jail because they're obligated to, and if they, even if they have private insurance, I don't think they'd pay for it while they're in custody.
Yeah.
Okay, so that, the problem becomes is that, and we have to face this all the time. What do you do when you have a prisoner who has cancer?
Yeah.
Or AIDS, or...
But my extended concern there was, God forbid, you have a prisoner fatality.
Right.
Do you have insurance for that? Because my recollection is that was $5 million the last time we had one. Does Curry County have the insurance to cover that?
Well, it would be under CIS, whatever your policy is with CIS.
Okay.
Well, there are a lot of lawsuits that come out of that, whether it's, you know, above board or whatever, or just die of natural causes, whatever, there will be a lawsuit.
I sat on the CIS board, is why I'm concerned about it.
Here's another thing that just occurred to me on the medical side. All right.
Yeah.
A person who is in custody, if they feel they're not getting the proper medical care, they can file for a writ of habeas corpus, and they can try to get the court to order to get them the care that they feel they need. All right. Now, like for example, we had a case several years ago where AIC said, I have to have a special mattress to sleep on. And he filed a habeas corpus. Okay. My office defends the jail for Coos County prisoners on habeas corpus. I'm not sure my successor would want to take on the responsibility for habeas corpus petitions filed by Curry County prisoners. And so that's another issue that you're going to want to take about. And, you know, it used to be, you know, we get one of those once a year. Well, we're seeing them 3, 4, 5 times a year now. They're getting to be more prevalent. You're not giving me brand name medicine versus the generic or whatever it is. So, and they take up time. They do. They take up time.
So with the frequent transport as well, I imagine. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, sorry, Commissioner-elect. The last time the road slid in my 8 years, between Brookings and Gold Beach, it slid in a portion where they could go over a logging road to get around.
Yeah.
So there was a way there to get around until they could get enough gravel put in place to get a one-way through.
Actually, it was State Highway. Carpenterville Road, the old 101.
Yes.
Was the workaround.
Was the workaround.
Okay.
The sketchy part is obviously the Port Orford area, right? Just south of Port Orford, there is no workarounds there. So when that goes, those sections there, south of Humbug is slid, I think, a couple times historically. Yes. So when those go, there is no option, right? There is no logging route around. So it's a little bit more difficult, you know, kind of North County to get south. And the sheriff probably could talk.
There is one workaround, but it doesn't like to be, you know, explained to people because there's big trucks that get up there and they get stuck and then they block and then it's because of so they don't recommend that you use any of these back logging roads.
Okay.
And last year when north of Gold Beach slid out, we had to petition the governor's office in order to allow us to file emergency waivers of extradition for all of our inmates, so we could transport them through California into Medford and Grants Pass to get them to Coos County. So,
Well, that sucks.
yeah.
Let's see.
All right.
And for my considerations, just the externalities and costs. And then one that I don't want to dig myself too deep into, but I watched your commissioners' meeting last night at times 2 speed so that I can get through it. But I think one of the other aspects that would have to be worked on is my understanding is a conflict with the commissioners in the sheriff's department that might make this difficult in Curry. So seeing resolution of that would be an important part of this discussion if it were to move forward, because it's going to take all of us working as a team, us and our sheriff, y'all and your sheriff. So that's just another consideration.
well, certainly desirous of spreading goodwill all the way around. All right, thank you for that. Drew, appreciate that. Mr. Langford, you are the first one in the room who specifically mentioned bringing out other ways that we could explore collaboration. So before we draw this to a close, I think it would be really wonderful and instructive to lay out any concepts that anyone in the room has, but I'll ask you to lead off with anything that comes to your mind to frame up future discussions that we could have along these lines.
I'll be as careful as I can because these aren't my policy decisions, right?
It's ideas.
It's ideas and concepts, and I can speak as a community member, not in my official capacity as a state employee. I think there are many overlaps in businesses, right? We look at entities and we look at the work that we do and perform, and there's many overlaps. I work for the state of Oregon, and there are judicial districts. There's 27 of us, and all the courts perform roughly the same work, right? The same work. It is the same. But there are things that we do as state employees and as a court that we can share, and there's things that we do that need to live specifically and organically within the counties in which the judges are elected and by the constituents they serve. But there's other aspects of that work that we can share. And so the Southern Oregon TCAs, which would be Coos, Curry, Douglas, Josephine, Jackson, Lake, and Klamath, as well as some of the Eastern Oregon TCAs, which would be Grant, Harney, Baker, and Malheur, have all partnered together to share services in recent years. We've shared things that make sense to our community. So we're sharing family law facilitators. And one might ask, what's a family law facilitator, right? So it's an individual who can, by law, help parties with domestic matters, so a divorce, a child custody matter, where they don't have to get an attorney. They don't have to seek out counsel and hire an attorney to get somebody to help them fill out paperwork. And it made a lot of logical sense for us to share those resources to ensure individuals in our communities had access to those services. Another issue that employees constantly speak to is training. I don't care what agency you work at. I don't care if it's McDonald's or it's a government agency. Staff tend to want to talk about training. We need more training. We need more education. We need to understand something. Laws are constantly changing. So that same group of TCAs, trial court administrators, is looking at how we can share training. And I mentioned those two areas, really not to gloat of the things that we have done, but to your question, Commissioner Taylor, is what other things could be discussed? And I think as the board considers what resources we share, those are the rocks that should be turned over. As you lay the deck of cards out and you say, what county resources could we share and partner with together that would make logical sense? It wouldn't be this level of it wouldn't require a roadmap that you have to unfold 37 times just to understand. And I would say there's probably services that both counties offer that make sense to consider talking about how they could share. I don't want to pinpoint those because I don't think it's my place to pinpoint those in an open meeting like this. But that's what I would lend to with the example of what some of the court administrators are doing in siloed organizations. Because the truth behind it is the state of Oregon has a state-run court system, but they're locally run at the end of the day. And those matters live local. And so while we're a state-run system, we still have these silos, and we still have to look at how we can share those resources that are taxpayer dollars at the end of the day. My budget is funded by taxpayer dollars. And I have to be considerate of how those resources are used and shared. And there will come a day where the courts are in a bad position. They don't have money as well. It comes around. We're likely overdue. Most agencies are, and it's hitting the counties first. Typical recessions for government level jobs run about every 10 to 12 years. The last time most of us looked at a recession or looked at cuts was around 2017. Time before that, 2008, 2009. Time before that, 2001. So you can kind of track back the trends of where money gets tight, and the county finances are compiled with the fact there's not the revenue coming into the counties that used to come in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s. So without putting a pin on it, sorry for my vagueness, but I don't totally want to meddle in county policy decisions of, what items. I do believe, and I think most would say, that we should turn those rocks and take a look at them and see what's underneath, and see if there's things that could be shared to save money for the taxpayers. And maybe the answer to that is no, there aren't things that can be shared. The service needs to stay and remain to the constituents that elect and that pay for those services, but maybe there are things that make fiscal sense to share, as the court has decided to share facilitators. Those positions are allocated here, but they can equally provide a statutory service to any resident in the state of Oregon. And really, that's what we're in the business of, is providing services to our communities.
Very good. And in line with Mr. Langford's expressed reluctance to articulate or pinpoint ideas in an open setting that may not be totally within his bailiwick, I'll put out there, if that applies to anyone else in the room, please seize the opportunity to email any one of us here or reach out to us in any way that you desire to express that idea, because we're looking. We're trying to figure this out too. We don't have all the answers, obviously, but it's our responsibility to produce them. So any of those inputs in a private session or setting where we could enhance that concept and explore its feasibility would be very much appreciated. We do have an online comment.
One thing, can I just interject real quick?
Yeah,
before you
stand
go
by
to
one more
your
moment online, please,
online
Jay.
comment? So to reflect on something that Sheriff Ward brought up that was emphasized by Commissioner Sweet, I think before we get into idea sharing, because idea sharing was going to inevitably bring up departments. And as it was brought up, as soon as we start discussing particular services, the individuals in those services will obviously have some concerns. Or they might have ideas. But I think one of the things that we could do to progress the conversation is, assign essentially a commissioner liaison from each county to work together, and then work kind of with those departments in conjunction with the ideas, so that it's not something that may catch somebody off guard, and put them in a position of being in a defensive mode, because it's hard to work out.
Sorry.
Is the table okay?
I don't think I was directed at
We're awake now.
Yeah, so I think, I think if nothing else, if we're able to walk away with the idea that we're going to have a collaborative effort that's identified by, with two commissioners who are discussing things that can take things back to their own commission and talk to departments specifically about ideas that may be expressed in a more private setting before we're actually talking about strategic moves. I think that might be something we should honor.
Well, I think that's a great input. We'll have to figure out how that would function in light of public meetings law, of course, but...
That's why I say only one from each.
Yeah.
Liaisoning with each other to discuss those things. I mean, but, obviously, for instance, Lane Council of Governments, right, have created a situation where they share resources amongst many of the Lane municipalities to provide adequate service to each of the municipalities that they all subscribe into. And so obviously it's not at that level because we don't have that kind of, that robust of a community. But, I think it's in a similar vein.
Right. Very good.
Because we're also leaving out some other counties that have had some extremely difficult financial times. Douglas had an incredible amount of people they recently had to lay off. And Josephine's had many struggles as well. And so, this isn't unique to just Coos Curry, but many of them.
I just attended a Oregon State Sheriff's Association conference in Bend, and during our roundtable, I don't like to say it wasn't, but we're not unique. There's a lot of sheriff's offices that are facing the same problems. So,
yeah, I don't think that's by accident either, Sheriff. Okay. No, I'd like to give Chris Castman would like to pipe in, and we'll offer some other public comment as well. So can you please mic up Mr. Castleman? Chris, are you ready?
Yep. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Cool. I'm actually can I bounce this to Perry Holman? I think he's in the room real quick. I think he's gonna have a lot of overlap with what I have to say. So I think it might be better for him to go first.
That's fine with me, Perry.
Yes.
I don't really know what that's about, but
I don't either.
okay.
Perry Holman from Coos Bay. I just had one. I see a commonality between this and the Coos County juveniles that are being housed in Roseburg. So I don't know how the legality and their rights. You would think they were pretty equal, and I wanted to bring that up as a something to compare it to.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Our Curry County juveniles are also.
Yeah, I suspect that there might be some difference. I know that the transport and hold limits were specifically referenced to adults in custody. Is there a difference with juveniles?
Well, the juvenile system's a little bit different because there are a lot of things that you can do by video in the juvenile system that is not permitted in the adult system. And so I know that we do a lot of hearings by video with juveniles that are being held at the facility in Roseburg. However, there are situations where those kids need to be brought to court, and then it's the responsibility of, for example, Coos County, it's their responsibility to go over, pick them up, bring them over for the hearing, turn around and take them back if the judge continues to order detention. Mm-hmm. So the issues are the same, but it's a much smaller issue because I think we only rent like 4 beds at Douglas County, and I don't think we use all 4 all the time. And I don't know how many Curry County rents, but it's a much smaller issue because the juvenile system is fixed in such a way that we're looking strictly at rehabilitation and not punishment. So there's a lot of more incentives, or I shouldn't say incentive, a lot more requirements in the juvenile system to keep a kid out of detention. And so the kids that are in detention are ones generally that have done something pretty serious.
Yeah, so speaking as a juvenile justice director, speaking on just that, there's I guess there would be more fluid interventions that occur before we have to actually transport somebody to detention. And also I want to preface it with the occurrence of those scenarios are a lot less than in adults. So there may be 5 in custody situations, arrests a day in adult, where in youth it may be 1 or 2 a week that require a formal detaining. So the scope is much smaller.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris. Did that cover the topic that was on your mind, or is there something else you wanted to say?
No, sorry. Yeah, miscommunication. But good question. I did want to talk about, I keep hearing about I'm Chris Castleman. I'm a resident of Coos County, and I've been pretty involved with trying to come up with some solutions, some working concepts for solving crime and the public safety funding issue in Coos County. I've been hearing a lot today about looking for collaborating on concepts. And I just want to touch on the fact that the concept is collaboration. Like the concept to walk away from today, the solution for today is collaboration. And I would urge John Sweet and Rod Taylor, our Coos County commissioners, to vote to form a crime commission or a public safety committee, something today. Form it today, vote on it today. I've asked this a gazillion times, and other citizens have as well. And what that would allow us to do is to bring a lot of the people that are in this room right now, but also a lot of the people who aren't in this room right now. For example, if you look at the public safety levy that was on the ballot in November for Coos County,
Sorry, it went long.
All right.
Chris. Stand by.
Can you hear me now? All right.
Okay, you should be back.
Okay, can you hear me good?
Yeah.
So the public safety levy that was just on the ballot was voted 35% yes, 65 no. And on that room, I don't see the no portion highly represented, and I don't think they're involved in a lot of these conversations. So we need to feel like we're being led and not feel like we're being controlled or ignored. We need to be participants in the solution, not pawns. Like property tax levies make people like me feel like a pawn if I'm not participating in the conversation and in the solutions. And I just urge you guys to actually take action on that today. Please stop kicking it down the road. Please form some sort of a committee, a task force that will attack these issues, that will collaborate on solutions. Like Sheriff Ward from Curry County touched on, you know, the not having people involved in these processes and conversations causes conflict. It causes rumors to spread and people to get uneasy. And if there was a structured process to discuss these ideas, and you know, county employees could know that there's a monthly meeting that they can attend, there's point people, there's representatives on this committee that represent their concerns and their points of view, and then people from my neck of the woods as well. So I guess I'm beating a dead horse, but I just urge you guys, you know, we might not be able to take action today on a concrete solution that solves our funding or our crime crisis, but we absolutely can. You have the power. Commissioner Rod Taylor, Commissioner John Sweet, you have the power to take action today to form a committee, and that is in and of itself a solution. The concept today is collaboration. And I appreciate you guys holding this meeting and pushing this forward. And Happy New Year. I hope in the new year we can move forward and be more collaborative. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your comments. Commissioner Trost points out that we have the local Public Safety Coordinating Council.
Yes, we do. We already have a committee that is in place, and the courts are involved, my office involved, the public defender's office involved, Department of Human Services involved, providers such as our Kids Hope Center, the Women's Safety Team, I think they call themselves the Safe Projects, involved, defense attorneys are involved, parole and probation is involved in that committee, and we meet. The Board of Commissioners, I believe John Sweet is currently the representative of the commissioners on that committee. We meet, I want to say, we don't meet monthly, but I think we meet just about every other month. And I forgot to mention that as part of this discussion, we certainly we call it LIPSIC by its acronym. we should make sure LIPSIC from both counties are involved in these discussions.
Yeah, I agree with that. So on LIPSIC, I'm hearing that there's not necessarily like an at-large public
Actually,
member
I
of the
think
public role.
There is actually there is a public member.
Just one.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's one.
Commissioner Taylor, we have a LIPSIC committee as well, and I'm part of that, and we do meet monthly, and we have a layperson, a member of the community.
So, actually, in light of that, I mean, I know that Chris was advocating for Commissioner Sweet and I to move to create a committee, but I actually am loath to create more committees that overlap with what is already happening. We're already kind of doing that in one regard, in regards to the budget. So it sounds like any member of the public who's interested in being involved in those conversations really should seek an opportunity to become involved in LIPSIC. Reach out to any of us with information about that.
I think they're all public notice meetings.
Yeah, they are public meetings, that's true. I do know that that's true, so. Okay, all right, is there anybody else? Mayor Shamahorn.
I'd like to say a few words.
Yeah, please do. Step up to this mic right here, and thank you very much.
I think the elephant in the room here is the word collaboration. Unfortunately, the fight between the Board of Commissioners of Curry County and the sheriff have made all the newspapers in Curry County. I read extensively the press release, I guess, from the labor representative, which attacked the commissioners over and over again. Then the commissioners come back with their response. Believe me, guys, this is not going to help you pass any kind of... The public is reading this. If you guys cannot collaborate in Curry County, and I've watched several of the meetings, and I understand that your role is the finances, and you have certainly the right and the expectation to ask the questions, but to take these things personally and take them to the pages of these small newspapers is going to kill you. You've got, I've been an elected official in Coos County for 40 years, and I keep track of everything that happens in Curry County and Coos County. And the thing that we need to do is we need to work together as much as possible for public safety. Coos County particularly is named one of the 10th worst places to live in Oregon because of the crime rate. And certainly closing the second pod, which no one wants to do, is not going to make matters any better. And I just urge you to somehow, and I do see that Georgia Cockerham, who is on the Coos Curry Electric Board of Directors, I understand that they are forming a committee to help support your levy. And I think we need to do that here in Coos County. I think Chris Castleman's right. I don't think there's been enough reach out to the people of just the everyday people, because when you've got the kind of elections that we're talking about where they're not even close, I don't know how you're going to bridge the gap if that truly is the way that you're going to try and fund public safety. I think you need to look, and I sent Mr. Alcorn a email this week, because after studying through League of Oregon Cities, I've determined it doesn't look like either Brookings or Port Orford have a bed tax. So if Curry County were to, they call it TLT, transient lodging tax, we call it TOT. In Coos County, each of the cities have a lodging tax. Ours is 9.5, and so is Coos Bay and North Bend. So there's not as much capacity in Coos County, but in Curry County, if in fact Brookings has no tax, and they do? They do. Okay, because I got the latest information from League of Oregon Cities, so I wondered, it didn't seem possible. The only way I could conceive of that would be because they were so close to the California border, they were trying to have no tax. So they do have, do you know the percentage?
I don't know the percentage, but they do. They don't have a lot of hotels so that a lot of it is VRBO, because the hotels actually reside on the county side of the harbor.
So then, in that case, they're not generating TOT then to Brookings.
They are. It's just not. It's not a large amount. We do have room in our TLT because the countywide TLT is only at 7%. So we have 3% to look at that we have to look at for certain. So and it generates a fairly substantial amount for the county. It's like 1.2. In TLT, which obviously 30% can be used for
only 30%.
Only 30% can be used for other purposes, but we have 3% that we can legally adjust. Obviously, you know that, and so that's something that we have to look at really closely.
Yeah. Well, I just hope that you can get get some kind of a positive message that you guys are going to work together if you're going to have any success in Curry County. I mean, in Bandon, we don't even have a newspaper, so the only thing that we have is the Coos Bay World. But you guys have little newspapers in Brookings, Port Orford, and Gold Beach, and they're the ones that are going to carry this, and that's what your no votes are reading. So you've got to somehow try to work together.
And Mayor, I want to thank you for the email. And we do have our county council looking at increasing that if we can.
Good.
And but I appreciate you reaching out to me and sending me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any way we can tap the tourists, we need to. I mean, I thought Rod had an idea of a 2%. Any way that we can get dollars that does not come from our property taxpayers but comes from the tourists, we really need to look at that.
Thank you, Mayor Shamhorn. I saw another hand. Yes, Lieutenant. Would you just step up and use this if you don't mind?
I don't want to get the sheriff off.
Thank you for allowing time for public comments and everything. One thing that I do want to bring up for everybody, and I hope it's worth its while. This has happened before. Benton County has a 35-bed jail, and they have 4 contracts to house their adults in custody. And what that looks like is when someone's arrested in Corvallis at a football game, they go to Benton County, and they're housed in their 35-bed jail until they go to trial. As soon as they go to trial, they are sent either to the Dalles, and they're sentenced to they get sentenced and they go to the Dalles. Or they'll go to Lincoln County and they'll serve their time in Newport. Or if it's a pretrial detainee thing, they will go to Lynn County. Right now they're looking at also contracting with Clatsop County. Benton County, because of that, they still have to run their jail at 35 beds. They still have to staff it, just like Curry County would have to do. But they also have a robust transport team. They have more transport deputies and vehicles than they do staff in the jail, just to be able to accomplish this. The other piece to that is when someone's released from the Dalles, they're not able to go through the Oregon transport shuttle system, where we all kind of cooperate together. Benton County has to go pick them up the night before, and they have to come back. So this is not a new concept that's being proposed here today or even talked about. But there are huge ramifications to this. And like we've had this conversation, if our jail closes, it doesn't reopen. There is no way around it. One thing that we didn't hear from, and if Sheriff Fabrizio allows, I would love to hear the perspective from the jail commander of Coos County, because we do work really well with each other in our jails. When there's issues with staffing, where they can't do a transport to Roseburg or to Salem, we pick up that slack. And likewise, if we have an issue, they pick up that slack. We have had situations where they're at overcapacity, but we're not. So we take that into consideration. We keep their inmates a little bit longer because we have the capacity, and then we'll transport them the next week. So we are working together, so I don't want it to be like we're not working together. But if you do allow, and if Sheriff, if you allow, and he wants to speak, I think it'd be a good thing to hear.
Captain Meade, would you care to take up Lieutenant Crone's offer?
What is the offer exactly? I heard a lot of stuff, but I wasn't, not sure.
Well, I think
perspective.
the invitation is if you have any comments to this topic. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, for today, the topic of jail contracting is put on a way back burner right now because there's so much to work through. But
Right.
please, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Well, I put together some numbers before the meeting, but I wasn't aware of the 4-hour rule. And I looked in the ORS and I don't see it. So I'm sure it's there. It's just in the fine print. But to me, that just totally destroys the whole thing.
It really
Because the
does.
transport, it was an issue before, but it's so much bigger with that rule.
Yeah.
So I don't know what else we could do in terms of making a deal work.
Yeah, I don't either, and you're right. That is, to me, the biggest obstacle that we face.
Right. We were already thinking transport would be tricky,
Mhm.
but in light of the 4-hour rule, it gets just really impossible.
Mhm.
So we do try to work together with Curry County as much as we can already. You know, we're always open to new ideas and exploring things, but I don't know what else we could do at the current juncture.
Anything else?
No, that's about it.
Okay, thank you for that input. Sheriff Ward?
One thing that wasn't really hit on was about people with mental illness. We have people that cannot be housed together or transported together, and they don't play well with other AICs, and we're getting more and more of that. A lot of them are basically on nuisance calls or gets arrested because they've been the same place over and over and over, and finally they end up in our jail, which jail is not a good place for them to begin with. But you know, transporting those up to Coos County, you would have to take on that responsibility as well, as far as not being able to house them together, or if they need to be transported to the state hospital, who does that? Those are things that probably need to be included in on the conversation.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about that or comments about it?
No, it's something we hadn't thought of, actually. We have 5 holding cells, and of course, we have a policy if they're drunk, high, severely mentally ill, or on suicide watch, that they're not just put back in general housing. You can't put them there. It's recipe for disaster. And those are typically full all the time. So that would actually leave that entire segment of the population unanswered. So that's something I hadn't considered. That's a good
All
point.
right, Mr. Langford?
So I'll just give you, I know off the top of my head the civil commitment data, the criminal aid and assist data, but all of that really kind of veins together, right? Civil commitments, some of those, a percentage of those individuals do commit crimes and end up in the criminal justice system. Some of them don't. But civil commitments in this county alone, just Coos County, last year around 80 civil commitments. This year alone, we're expected to have at the Coos Bay Hospital about 200 civil commitments. So perspective, I think we could probably trend, and Mr. Frazier could comment to this as well, related to aid and assist matters. We're seeing the same trends related to our criminal population that have severe mental health issues and that are unable to participate in the criminal justice system. Until they're found able, they have to go, depending on the level of offense, to the state hospital, if the state hospital has capacity, which most of the time they don't have capacity. If they are released and still found unable but put on community restoration, it's a whole separate conversation in community restoration of whether or not they can get to a point of being able to participate in the process. Coos County is in the process of setting up an individualized docket just to deal with the amount of aid and assist cases at the courthouse that we're seeing because there's such a frequent flying issue. Paul, do you want to add anything to that?
You know, I've been doing this for 40 years, and the last 10 years, the issue of mental illness has just skyrocketed to the point that We have people here now that have been found that they'll never be able to aid and assist in their case. But they keep going out and committing crimes. And finally, we've taken the position, okay, court's found that they'll never be able to aid and assist. They bring them to jail, we're not going to file on them. And I'm kind of thinking maybe Josh has the same problem, but not to the extent that we do. But this is a bigger issue. There was a person that was at the hospital, the Bay Area Hospital, that got out of control, assaulted a nurse, punched a hole in the wall. He was being held on a mental commitment. He hadn't committed a crime. They called us and said, hey, would you put him in your jail because we don't want him anymore? Okay. Well, we couldn't take him because he's not committed a crime. But it's a civil thing. But this is a bigger issue. And I just thought of something that, in regards to Mr. Farmer's question about insurance. Most of these people do not have insurance. In fact, I would suspect all of them don't. And the Oregon Health Plan will not cover them when they're in jail. So that was a suggestion several years ago, and I don't know where it went. But if the Oregon Health Plan would cover in custody prisoners who don't otherwise have insurance, that could take some burden off the counties.
I think that's a federal rule that limits what Oregon can do with federal
Right.
funds with which they.
Right, but that's a, so they don't have insurance, we got to pay the bill.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody who wishes to tender a comment who hasn't had that opportunity? I think we probably arrived at a point where we don't have a lot more productive to get done here. Commissioner Sweet has a comment.
This would be looking. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Thank you. This would be looking forward. This isn't something to talk about today. I think we've pretty much committed ourselves to working together with Curry County to collaborate to see how we can be more efficient. And we've talked a little bit about, Mary talked about it and Chris talked about it, different sources of revenue than property taxes. And I think we have to pay attention to their comments. The way property taxes work in this state and the way inflation works, the cost of doing business, whether it's private sector or public sector, if your revenue increases each year are limited to 3% or less, as ours are, I don't think there's any way we can pass all kinds of levies, but we would grow right past those levies. Inflation is kind of curbed today, but our costs are still up 15-20% from where they were 4 or 5 years ago. And our 3% limits on property tax increases just don't keep up with the cost of doing business. So we've got to find some new sources of revenue. And I would like to see the two counties schedule some conversations about this. I don't think any one of us together, nor even the two of us, but if we could agree and then talk to other counties and they would agree that there are some things that we could look into. And I mean things different than getting the ONC lands, increased harvest on the ONC lands. We've been kicking that horse for 40 years. I think the damn thing is dead. And we won't quit trying, but I think we have to look for other sources. And there are other sources. So I'd appreciate that we could add that to the agenda, maybe go down two paths at once. One, to talk about more efficiencies, the other is to talk about more appropriate revenue schemes.
Yeah, and a certain amount of those conversations are probably appropriately held within the Association of Oregon Counties District 4 organization, because those of us, we counties in District 4, are all facing pretty much the same problems, you know, at different timings. And I know that Douglas County would be interested in having that conversation, I think. And so, and that meeting, that district meeting is, we have actually a special meeting coming up on January 6th. And so that's not very far into the future to look to having that conversation. But I do think that that the suggestion of a focused and regularly scheduled collaborative consensus between the counties in pursuit of those efficiencies as well as those revenue opportunities is an appropriate thing for us to do in the interest of our counties and our constituents. So so there's that, and you know, I think we could actually take action on that for a specified representative from each of our county boards to engage in that ongoing conversation and then report back to our respective boards. And so I know that now we're organized informally. We don't have a common vote on a motion here, but Commissioner Sweet and I could. In fact, I'll just go ahead and do that. I would at this point make a motion that Coos County establishes a Board of Commissioners representative to meet on a regular basis with a similarly appointed representative from the Curry Board in order to further and advance this collaboration conversation as well as the funding sources conversation.
Sometimes I worry about having motions that are outside of what the specific intent of this meeting was. It was to discuss jail.
What about a consensus?
And I just think we just do that. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, what
we need
about
a motion?
Okay, so I guess I assume that we would have consensus that that's a good idea.
Yes, we do. Curry County does.
Oh, yeah. I don't have a vote yet.
No, but this is a consensus. All you have to do is nod your head.
Well, we're kind of getting to a vote.
Okay. Yes, Mr. DA.
Let me put my county council hat on. My suggestion would be that that's your next, for each county, put it on your agenda.
Yeah.
If it's your next board meeting, yes, we're going to have a liaison and pick the person. And then there it is on your agendas.
Yeah.
And you get around the public meetings quandary.
A current consensus to do it, and then an official motion at the next meeting to identify the person.
Right.
I think we have consensus.
Yeah, so that's great input. Thank you, Mr. Frazier. I appreciate that. One more thing that I definitely, I want to hit on. There was a follow-up from Mr. Castman. I asked him to type it out so that I could just read it and speed these things along and not encounter the audio issue again. He says, I think my point was missed entirely by county leadership. There was a mention of a committee that I've never heard of and never been asked to join or attend. For someone who has been as incredibly vocal and engaged in pursuing a solution, you clearly have not included citizens like me in the process, and we are not represented on the committee you mentioned. That's the point. If you want to move forward, then you have to include different representatives in the process. Keep doing the status quo, and you'll keep getting the status quo. And the status quo with regard to public safety, or the lack thereof, is having a terribly negative impact on our communities. The committee mentioned by the DA clearly has not been effective in finding a solution to the problem that puts us in the room today. This isn't the time to keep ignoring citizens like me and leave us out of the process. This is the time for change. I urge you once more to initiate the formation of a new task force today that meets regularly and engages with new ideas and representatives. Inaction today will further cement our concerns that Coos County leadership wants to rule rather than lead. So I'll just respond to those comments and first say that, when a committee is formed, we can utilize our available resources to make that publicly known, and then the appropriate response from members of the public would be to, reach out if they have an interest in joining that, being a part of that. That having been said, I do think that there is a significant benefit to be realized from greater public involvement in, like, Lipsick, for example. And so I would certainly be open to, in a future meeting, propose the idea that an additional seat or two be afforded to members of the at-large public so that some greater public representation can be afforded in that setting. So that's what I'll commit to, and again, that's going back to the conversation about motions in the context of the meeting under a certain agenda heading. I think we'll avoid that, moving on that right now, but talk about it at a future EOC.
Rod, who was that from that you read?
That's from Chris Castleman, again, a follow-up from him. So, and if you want a copy of this chat, you can certainly have a printout of it as well. Okay, is there anything else today for the good of the order before we call this meeting adjourned?
Where's the pizza?
Yeah, so I think actually, Sheriff, that's a great question. I think the ordering of the pizza might not have gotten executed. So what I'm going to say here is that if there's anyone in this room who would have partaken in that pizza, when we're adjourned here, I'm going to go down to Denny's, and whoever shows up at the table, I'm buying the pizza. How's that? So we'll get it ordered, and when we see how many bodies are there, and how's that for a suitable substitute?
It's really good pizza, too.
Oh, it
I
is.
appreciate that. I got some other things I got to go deal with back home, so.
So your question really wasn't that serious.
I was being sarcastic.
I'm glad you asked it.
All right, well, thank you all for being here. The participation was excellent, a great conversation, and very edifying. Thank you all very much, and we are adjourned. All right. You guys have a good